I have known Henry for as long as I can remember. He was always around, ever since we were kids, because he was my brother's best friend. For years, he had just been another face in the crowd, someone I didn't think much about beyond the occasional hello or shared laugh. We'd hang out at family gatherings, play video games together, or just chat casually, and that was it. But then something changed. It wasn't sudden, it was more like a slow realization. I started noticing little things about him that I'd never really paid attention to before. The way he smiled when he talked about his dreams, the way his laugh made me feel warm inside, the way his eyes seemed to understand me when no one else did. But I ignored it. I convinced myself it was just a phase, just a silly crush. After all, he was my brother's friend, and nothing more. It wasn't until one summer evening, when I was 16, that I felt the shift in the air. My brother had gone out with some friends, leaving me home alone with Henry. I tried to act normal, but there was an undercurrent of tension between us. Something unspoken, something new. We ended up in the kitchen, chatting about random things. But it wasn't like before. There was a spark now, something charged between us that I couldn't quite place. As we talked, I caught myself staring at him for longer than usual. His smile seemed brighter, his presence more comforting. And then, without warning, I realized what was happening. I was starting to feel something for Henry, something I had never felt before. It wasn't just admiration or friendship. It was something deeper, something I couldn't ignore. My heart raced, my palms got sweaty, and I found it hard to concentrate on anything else. But I didn't say anything. I couldn't. How could I? For days after that, I couldn't shake the feeling. Every time I saw him, my heart would flutter. It felt like everything was different, like we were two people who suddenly saw each other in a completely new light. But I told myself it was just a phase. It would pass. It had to. The next few days felt different. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something had shifted between Henry and me. It wasn't like before, when he was just my brother's friend. No. Now it was as if we were two people who had suddenly discovered that the space between us was a little too close for comfort. I tried to go about my days as normal, but it was impossible to ignore how much my thoughts kept circling back to him. Every time I saw him, my heart raced a little faster, and every smile of his seemed to burn just a little hotter. But he didn't act any differently. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. He still treated me like he always had. Friendly, easygoing, like nothing had changed. But then, one evening, he did something that made my pulse spike in a way I didn't expect. It was late, and I was sitting at the kitchen table, reading a book. The house was quiet. Everyone else either out or asleep. Suddenly, I heard footsteps approaching from the hallway, and there he was. Henry, standing in the doorway, a hesitant look in his eyes. "Hey," he started, his voice quieter than usual. "Can we talk?" I felt my stomach flip. "Sure. What's up?" He stepped into the room and closed the door behind him, the sound of it clicking shut, sending a strange sense of finality through me. He walked over to the counter, leaning against it, and for a moment, we just stood there in silence, not knowing what to say. Finally, Henry broke the silence, his eyes meeting mine. "I know things have been weird between us lately." His tone was serious, more serious than I'd ever heard him. I just, I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like something's changed. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. Was he talking about the same thing I was feeling? The distance between us that didn't feel so distant anymore? The way everything between us seemed charged, like there was something pulling us together, but also pushing us apart? "I feel it too," I whispered, the words slipping out before I could stop them. He looked at me, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "You do?" I nodded, unable to tear my gaze away from his. There was a vulnerability in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. Something raw. Something that made me realize that this wasn't just some passing feeling. This was real. Henry let out a breath, a small laugh escaping him. "I don't know what to do with this, you know?" He rubbed the back of his neck, clearly uncomfortable. It feels like, I don't know, like I'm seeing you in a way I never have before. I swallowed hard. I feel the same way, I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. There was another long pause, the kind of silence that felt like it stretched on forever, heavy with unspoken words. And then, without warning, he stepped closer, his hand brushing lightly against mine. The touch sent a shiver through me, and I froze, unsure of what to do next. But Henry didn't pull away. Instead, he looked at me, his gaze softening. I think I've always seen you, but now it's different. I couldn't breathe. My thoughts were swirling, everything happening too fast, but at the same time, I didn't want it to stop. I didn't want to go back to how things were before. Henry, I whispered, almost afraid to say it, but I couldn't stop myself. What if this? What if we're not supposed to feel this way? He took a step closer, his hand now fully resting on mine, his touch warm and reassuring. What if we are? And then, in that moment, the world seemed to fall away. All the questions, all the doubts disappeared. It was just us, Henry and me, standing in the quiet kitchen, on the edge of something neither of us fully understood, but both felt too strongly to ignore. The next few days felt like walking on a tightrope. I couldn't stop thinking about that moment in the kitchen, the way Henry's hand had lingered over mine, the way his eyes had held mine in a way I'd never seen before. Everything felt charged, like we were standing at the edge of something, and if either of us made a move, we'd fall into a whole new world, one where we couldn't go back to the way things were. I tried to act normal, but it was impossible. Every time I saw Henry, my heart raced. I couldn't look him in the eye without feeling a strange mix of excitement and terror. He was still my brother's friend, right? Nothing was supposed to change. But everything had changed. One evening, my brother had planned to go out with his friends, leaving me and Henry alone at the house. I tried to convince myself it would be fine, just two people hanging out. But deep down, I knew it wasn't going to be that simple. When Henry arrived, he was a little more relaxed than usual, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes flicked to mine, and then quickly away. We sat down on the couch, both of us silent, unsure of what to say. It felt like the room was closing in around us. Finally, Henry broke the silence, his voice low. So, should we just pretend like nothing happened? Like that night in the kitchen didn't change anything? I felt a wave of relief, mixed with a shot of nerves. I don't know if I can pretend, Henry, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. I can't stop thinking about it. He shifted in his seat, leaning forward, his eyes never leaving mine. Me neither, he said, his voice quiet but intense. I've been trying to convince myself that it's just some stupid crush, but it's not. It feels real, and I can't ignore it anymore. I swallowed hard, my heart racing. What does that mean for us? If we're not supposed to feel like this, then what? Henry stood up suddenly, pacing the room. I don't know, but I can't act like I don't feel something every time I'm around you, and it's driving me crazy. He stopped pacing, standing just a few feet in front of me, his gaze locked on mine. For a moment, it felt like the world had frozen. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, feel the tension between us thick in the air. And then, as if something inside him snapped, he took a step forward. I can't keep pretending, okay? I can't pretend that this, whatever this is, doesn't matter to me. I stood up, my breath catching in my throat. Henry! Before I could say anything else, he took my hand, his touch sending a rush of warmth through me. What if it's not wrong? He whispered, his voice shaky with the uncertainty that mirrored my own. I didn't have an answer. I didn't know what was right anymore. But what I did know was that the distance between us had vanished. The air between us felt electric, like we were on the edge of something much bigger than either of us had ever imagined. Without thinking, without asking for permission, Henry leaned in, his lips brushing against mine, in a soft, tentative kiss. It was slow at first, like he was testing the waters, unsure of how I would react. But then, as the seconds stretched on, everything else disappeared. The kiss deepened, and I responded in kind, my heart pounding in my chest, my mind a blur of emotions. This wasn't just a kiss, it was everything. It was the culmination of every stolen glance, every lingering touch, every unspoken word. And for the first time, I didn't care about the consequences. I didn't care about the past or the future. All I cared about was this moment, this connection that felt more real than anything else in my life. When we finally pulled away, breathless and wide-eyed, Henry looked at me, his expression a mixture of relief and fear. "Are we doing the right thing?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know the answer, but somehow, in that moment, I didn't need to. I just knew that whatever came next, we were in this together. The days that followed that kiss were a whirlwind. I couldn't stop thinking about it, and neither could Henry. Every time our eyes met, there was a certain electricity in the air, a tension that neither of us knew how to handle. But it wasn't just the kiss. It was the unspoken words, the feelings that hung between us like an unsolved riddle. We tried to act like everything was normal. Henry came over to hang out a few times, and I did my best to keep the conversation light, pretending that things hadn't shifted in the most profound way. But every time he laughed, I caught myself listening a little too closely. Every time he smiled, my heart would flutter in a way I couldn't explain. There was a strange kind of pressure building up inside me. On one hand, I wanted to pull away, to ignore everything that had happened. I didn't want to risk ruining the friendship we had, and I certainly didn't want to make things awkward for my brother. But on the other hand, every moment without him felt like a moment wasted. It was like I was holding my breath, waiting for the next step, waiting for Henry to make a move that would answer all my questions. Then, one evening, everything came to a head. It was late again, and the house was quiet. My brother had gone out, leaving me and Henry alone, just like before. But this time, it was different. There was no casual chat, no easygoing laughter. There was only the heavy silence that filled the space between us, both of us aware of the tension, but neither of us sure how to address it. We ended up in the living room, sitting on opposite ends of the couch. I was staring at the TV, pretending to watch a show, but my mind was miles away, thinking about that kiss and what it meant. Henry, on the other hand, was tapping his foot nervously, his eyes flicking over to me every now and then. Finally, he broke the silence. "You know, we can't keep doing this," he said, his voice quiet, but his words were sharp, like they carried more weight than they seemed to. I turned to look at him, my heart skipping a beat. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to sound casual, though I could feel my stomach tightening with anticipation. Henry shifted in his seat, his fingers nervously tugging at the hem of his shirt. "I mean, pretending like things are normal, like nothing happened between us. It's not fair to either of us." He paused, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know about you, but I can't just forget it." I felt my heart race at his words, a part of me wanting to say something, to reach out and tell him that I felt the same way. But another part of me, fearful, uncertain, wanted to pull back, to hide from the truth that had been building between us. "But what if this is just a phase?" I whispered, the words escaping before I could stop them. "What if we're just caught up in something that's not real?" Henry shook his head, his eyes locking with mine. "I don't think it's just a phase," he said, his voice steady, though I could see the uncertainty behind it. "I can't stop thinking about you, and I don't think you can stop thinking about me either." His words hit me like a wave, crashing through the defenses I'd built up. There it was, laid bare in front of me. The truth. The realization that neither of us could ignore this connection, no matter how much we tried. I took a deep breath, my mind racing. "I don't want to mess things up, Henry," I confessed, my voice trembling slightly. "I don't want to ruin what we have." Henry looked at me with such intensity that I felt like he could see straight through me. "I don't know what's going to happen," he said softly, "but I do know that I can't keep pretending like this doesn't matter. You matter. We matter." I felt a lump form in my throat as his words sank in. For the first time, I realized that I wasn't alone in this confusion, this whirlwind of emotions. Henry felt the same way, and suddenly, the fear that had been holding me back seemed a little less daunting. Before I could say anything else, Henry leaned in closer, his hand resting on the couch beside mine. "I'm not asking for anything crazy," he said, his voice gentle. "I just want to be real with you. I want us to figure this out, together." And for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. Whatever was happening between us was scary and uncertain, but I wasn't alone anymore. Henry was right there with me, and together, we could navigate this new chapter. I nodded slowly, my voice barely above a whisper. "Okay, let's figure it out." The weeks that followed felt like a blur. Everything had changed, and yet nothing had. Henry and I were still navigating the strange space between us, but now, we didn't feel like we were hiding from the truth anymore. We had stopped pretending that nothing had happened, that everything was normal. Instead, we had this unspoken understanding, a connection that was deeper than anything I had ever experienced. We talked more, opened up more. We shared our fears, our hopes, our worries about what might happen next. And through it all, we both knew one thing. We couldn't ignore what was between us, no matter how much we tried. It was a Saturday evening, and my brother had gone out with some friends. Henry came over like usual, but this time it felt different. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, like we were both on the edge of something we couldn't control. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a mixture of excitement and nervousness swirling inside me. We ended up in the same spot where everything had changed, the living room, where the silence had once been so heavy. But now it felt charged, like electricity was in the air. We were both standing by the window, looking out at the street, the city lights flickering in the distance. The world outside seemed so far away, like it no longer mattered. Henry turned to face me, his expression unreadable. "Are you scared?" he asked quietly. I hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, but not in the way I thought I would be," I admitted. "I thought I'd be scared of losing everything. But now, it's more about, what if this is everything we've been looking for?" Henry's eyes softened as he took a step closer to me, closing the gap that had always felt like an invisible wall between us. "I don't know what's going to happen next," he said, his voice low, "but I do know that I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose this, whatever it is." My heart skipped a beat. Every word he spoke felt like it was digging deeper into my soul, unraveling all the uncertainty that had held me back. The fear that had once consumed me was slowly fading away, replaced by something stronger. Something that felt right. Something that felt like it had always been meant to be. I reached out, my hand trembling slightly as I touched his arm. "Then we'll figure it out," I said softly. "Together." Henry's lips curved into a smile, and before I could blink, he leaned in, closing the space between us. My breath caught in my throat as I felt his hand gently brush against my cheek. The moment felt like it had been building forever, like everything in our lives had led up to this one moment. When his lips met mine again, it wasn't like the kiss before. This time, it wasn't out of confusion or uncertainty. It was out of something deeper, something undeniable. The kiss was soft, but filled with all the emotions we had kept locked away for so long. It was a promise that we were in this together, no matter what came next. We pulled away after what felt like an eternity, both of us breathless. Henry looked at me with a mixture of relief and something else, something I couldn't quite put into words. But it didn't matter, because in that moment, we both knew the truth. We were in this together, and whatever happened next, we would face it side by side. I don't want this to end, I whispered, my voice barely audible. It doesn't have to, Henry replied, his hand resting on mine. This is just the beginning. And in that moment, I realized that no matter where this journey took us, I had finally found someone who understood me in a way that no one else ever could. We weren't just brother and sister's friends anymore. We were something more, something real. And for the first time, I wasn't scared of what the future held. I was ready. Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and hit the subscribe button to stay updated with our latest stories.